My name is Azure Wilson, 35, a financial advisor who moved back home after my divorce. Last month, I overheard my sister whisper to our mother that she couldn't wait for me to leave. I stood frozen as Mom replied, she'd keep me around until I cleared the $66,000 mortgage. My heart shattered, especially since I'd been working overtime to pay that mortgage as her birthday surprise. What happened at the party changed everything forever. Before I share this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. If family betrayal and sweet revenge stories interest you, hit subscribe and join me for this wild journey that taught me what family truly means. For 12 years, I built a successful career as a financial advisor in Chicago. My life seemed perfect on paper. I had a corner office overlooking Lake Michigan, a beautiful downtown condo, and what I thought was a happy marriage to James, my college sweetheart. That perfect life imploded 18 months ago when I discovered James was having an affair with his coworker. The betrayal blindsided me completely. We had been discussing starting a family, even looking at houses in the suburbs with good school districts. Instead, I found myself signing divorce papers and dividing assets we had spent a decade building together. The timing couldn't have been worse. The economic downturn hit my industry hard, and 3 of my biggest clients pulled their portfolios within the same month. Suddenly, I was facing a significant income reduction while dealing with expensive divorce proceedings and emotional trauma. The financial strain became unbearable after the divorce settlement. James managed to get half of our savings despite his infidelity. My expensive Chicago apartment no longer made sense with my reduced client list. After weeks of crunching numbers and weighing options, I made the difficult decision to temporarily move back to my childhood home in Madison, Wisconsin. When I first arrived with my 2 suitcases and laptop, my mother Margaret greeted me with open arms. At 68, she still had the warm smile and comforting hugs that had gotten me through skinned knees and teenage heartbreaks. My younger sister Tiffany, 32, seemed genuinely happy to have me back too, helping carry my bags to my old bedroom and insisting we celebrate with wine and takeout that first night. Our family dynamic had always been close but complicated. Dad died when I was 15 and Tiffany was 12, leaving Mom to raise us alone on a teacher's salary. She never remarried, focusing entirely on giving us stable lives. Tiffany had moved out briefly for college, but returned home after graduation to start her online jewelry business, saying it made financial sense while she built her brand. Those first few weeks back home filled me with gratitude. After months of crying myself to sleep in an empty apartment, being surrounded by family felt healing. I set up a small workspace in the corner of the den, determined to rebuild my client list and savings while working remotely. My plan was to stay for 6 months, maximum, just long enough to get back on my feet. One evening, while helping Mom with some bills, I noticed her struggling with the mortgage statement. She quickly tucked it away, but not before I glimpsed the remaining balance, $66,000. Later, I discreetly checked her financial records when she asked for help organizing her files. The discovery broke my heart. Mom had refinanced the house 5 years ago to help Tiffany start her business. Now on a fixed retirement income, she was barely making the monthly payments. That night, I made a decision. I would secretly pay off the remaining mortgage as her 70th birthday gift just 4 months away. It would be tight, but by taking extra freelance consulting work on nights and weekends, I could make it happen. Mom deserved security in her retirement, years after everything she had sacrificed for us. The memories of her sacrifices fueled my determination. I remembered how she would mend her own clothes, but always found money for our school activities. How she worked summer school every year so we could have small vacations. How she never once complained about the long hours or tight budget instead creating traditions like homemade pizza Fridays that made us feel rich in ways money couldn't measure. For the first 3 months, our living arrangement seemed harmonious. We developed an easy routine sharing cooking responsibilities and household expenses. I contributed significantly more than my fair share, hoping to ease Mom's financial burden without making it obvious. Sunday night family movie selections sometimes sparked friendly debates, but mostly we enjoyed rediscovering our family bonds. Tiffany and I even collaborated on a few projects, her creative eye complementing my financial expertise as I helped her streamline her business accounting. Looking back, I realize I wanted so badly to believe in this family harmony that I missed the warning signs hiding in plain sight. The calm before the storm lulled me into a false sense of security, making the betrayal that followed all the more devastating. Around the 3-month mark, subtle changes began disrupting our family harmony. The shift was almost imperceptible at first, like a slight drop in temperature you only notice when you start shivering. Tiffany started making comments during dinner about my living situation, being just until you get back on your feet, right? She would laugh afterward as if joking, but her eyes remained serious. When friends called the house phone, she would introduce me as her sister, who's staying with us temporarily. Each reminder of my supposedly transient status felt like a small paper cut. Then I began noticing items in my bedroom being moved or simply disappearing. My favorite coffee mug mysteriously relocated to the back of the cupboard. The throw blanket I brought from Chicago would appear in the living room without my moving it. When I mentioned these oddities, Tiffany would casually say, "Oh, I just borrowed it," without acknowledging the boundary crossing. Family gatherings became another battleground. Twice I came home to find Mom and Tiffany dressed up heading out the door to meet our cousins or aunts. "Oh, we thought you'd be working late again," they'd say, when I asked about not being included. It was just a last-minute thing. Yet social media posts showed these events had been planned for weeks. One evening, while working late in the den, I overheard Tiffany on the phone with her friend Brooke. "It's like an invasion of privacy," she complained, not realizing I could hear every word. "She's everywhere in the house." Mom and I had a routine before she showed up. The words stung, especially since I'd been making every effort to be considerate of their space. Mom's behavior changed too. She became quieter during family dinners, often avoiding eye contact when Tiffany made her subtle digs about my presence. When I helped with dishes afterward and tried discussing the growing tension, Mom would pat my hand and say, "You're imagining things, sweetheart. Everything's fine." Her dismissal of my concerns felt like a betrayal of its own. The situation worsened when I ran into my cousin Janet at the grocery store. Her awkward greeting prompted me to suggest coffee, where she reluctantly admitted that Tiffany had been telling family members I had nowhere else to go and was taking advantage of Mom's generosity. According to the family grapevine, I was a financial failure living off my mother rather than a daughter temporarily regrouping while still managing my own career. Tiffany's boyfriend Travis started appearing more frequently, often making uncomfortable jokes at my expense. So moving on to greener pastures soon, he'd ask while helping himself to dinner in our kitchen. "Tiff says, you're really making progress saving up." His knowing smirk made it clear they discussed my departure regularly. One Tuesday morning, I came downstairs to find Tiffany rearranging the den where I had set up my workspace. "Mom agreed I need more space for inventory," she announced, without looking up. "You can work at the kitchen table during business hours." Just like that, my professional space was eliminated without discussion. The whispered conversations became a regular occurrence. I would enter rooms to find Mom and Tiffany huddled together, their discussion halting abruptly when they noticed me. Their guilty expressions made it obvious I was the topic, but neither would admit it when confronted. My mail began disappearing, or appearing mysteriously opened. Twice I caught Tiffany answering my phone calls, telling clients I was unavailable for the foreseeable future. When confronted, she claimed she thought the calls were for her jewelry business, though my separate business line made that excuse implausible. The kitchen became another territorial battleground. Previously, I had enjoyed cooking for all of us, but suddenly, Tiffany insisted on meal planning without my input. Mom's on a special diet, she'd claim, though. Mom looked confused by this news. My healthy groceries would disappear while Tiffany's snacks remained untouched. Isolation crept in as my position in the household grew increasingly precarious. Friends called less as Tiffany forgot to tell me about messages. Clients commented on my difficulty being reached. Even my favorite reading chair somehow migrated to Tiffany's bedroom for better lighting. Despite the growing hostility, I remained determined to fulfill my promise to myself about the mortgage. Mom deserved security regardless of the family dynamics. I worked longer hours, often leaving early and returning late to minimize friction at home. When Tiffany claimed the Wi-Fi couldn't support both her business and my work, I quietly purchased a mobile hotspot rather than engage in another pointless argument. Looking back, I should have confronted the situation directly, but family relationships have a way of reverting to old patterns. As the older sister, I had always been the peacekeeper, the one who compromised to maintain harmony. Old habits die hard, especially when you're already emotionally vulnerable from a divorce. So I adjusted, accommodated, and tried to focus on the positive while counting down the days until Mom's birthday celebration, when I planned to give her the mortgage payoff gift before finding my own place. Little did I know that a casual trip to the grocery store would reveal exactly where I stood in what I thought was my loving family. The week before Mom's birthday, I took a half day off work to shop for ingredients for her favorite lemon raspberry cake. She had mentioned offhandedly that she hadn't had it since her 60th birthday, and I wanted to recreate that special moment for her. The specialty grocer across town was the only place that carried the imported raspberry preserves the recipe required. Shopping took less time than expected, and I arrived home around 2 in the afternoon instead of my usual 6 o'clock return. The driveway held both Mom's sedan and Tiffany's hatchback, unusual for that time of day since Tiffany typically worked at her friend's boutique on Thursdays. As I approached the side door leading to the kitchen, I heard voices through the partially open window. Something in their tone made me pause with my key hovering near the lock. They were discussing something serious, their voices carrying clearly in the quiet afternoon. "I cannot wait for Dale to leave." Tiffany's words rang out with unmistakable venom. Dale. The childhood nickname they had given me after an obsession with Dale Evans when I was 7. A name they only used between themselves these days, usually when reminiscing about old times. My hand froze on the doorknob as Mom's response came through clearly. Not until she clears the $66,000 mortgage. Then she can go wherever she wants. The grocery bags suddenly felt impossibly heavy in my arms. My heart pounded so loudly I feared they might hear it through the door. Hand trembling, I leaned closer, unable to walk away from this revelation. "She's been here almost 4 months already," Tiffany continued, voice dripping with annoyance. "You promised it would be temporary. Travis wants to move in next month, and we can't all fit in this house." "Just be patient," Mom replied, her tone pragmatic and cool. "Once she pays off the mortgage like she promised, we can suggest she find her own place. The house will be free and clear, and we can finally renovate the upstairs for you and Travis." My throat tightened painfully. Promised I had never mentioned paying the mortgage to either of them. This was supposed to be a surprise gift born of gratitude, not an expected payment for my presence. "What if she changes her mind?" Tiffany asked. She's so flaky since the divorce. Remember how she cried for days over that stupid coffee table James took? She won't, Mom said with chilling confidence. I told her about meeting with the bank about possible foreclosure. Complete fabrication, of course, but you should have seen her face. She offered to help right away, just like I knew she would, always trying to be the perfect daughter. A soft laugh followed. Remember when she gave me that $1,200 for the roof repairs last month? The roof is fine, Tiffany snickered, but my new website design isn't. Their laughter mingled together as my vision blurred with tears. The $1,200 I had transferred to Mom's account had come from selling my wedding ring, a decision that had taken emotional strength I didn't know I possessed. I backed away from the door, silently careful not to make the porch steps creak. In a daze, I returned to my car, placed the groceries on the passenger seat, and drove to the small park 3 blocks away. There alone, on a bench overlooking the duck pond, I allowed myself to process what I'd heard. All those nights, working until midnight on extra consulting projects. The weekends spent on freelance work rather than rebuilding my social life. The careful budgeting and sacrifice eating ramen noodles for lunch so I could put aside more for the mortgage fund. All while they plotted behind my back, seeing me not as family, but as a convenient source of financial support. Sleep eluded me that night. I lay awake reviewing the past months through this new painful lens. The strange comments, the territorial behavior, the whispered conversations, all made perfect sense now. I wasn't a daughter or sister coming home during a difficult transition. I was a temporary inconvenience with a useful bank account. The childhood nickname stung particularly deep. Dale had been a term of endearment once from the period when Tiffany followed me everywhere wanting to be just like her big sister. Now it was used as a punchline in their private joke about exploiting my vulnerability. Around 3 a.m, my hurt began crystallizing into something harder and more focused. The memory of Mom's birthday plans shifted in my mind. I had intended the mortgage payoff to be a loving gift with no strings attached. Now I saw it as an opportunity for something else entirely. Throughout my career, I had counseled clients through difficult financial decisions, always emphasizing the importance of emotional detachment when making major money moves. The irony wasn't lost on me, as I lay there plotting a financial strategy born entirely from emotional wounds. By dawn, I had a plan forming. I would not confront them immediately. Instead, I would gather information, confirm my suspicions, and prepare a response that would ensure I never found myself in such a vulnerable position again. The financial advisor in me knew that knowledge was power, especially when dealing with people who had already proven themselves untrustworthy. The next morning, I came downstairs with a carefully composed smile, accepting Mom's offered coffee with practiced ease. When Tiffany asked about my plans for the day, I mentioned a client meeting that would keep me out until evening. "Don't forget, we need to finalize the guest list for Mom's birthday," she reminded me, her concerned expression so convincing it would have fooled me just 24 hours earlier. "Wouldn't miss it for the world," I replied, meeting her eyes steadily. "I have something really special planned." Neither of them seemed to notice the slight edge in my voice or the new resolve in my posture. They had underestimated me for months. Now that would work to my advantage, as I prepared to show them exactly who they were dealing with. The next morning, I waited until both Mom and Tiffany left for their Thursday routines. Mom had her weekly bridge game, while Tiffany supposedly had inventory duty at her friend's boutique. With the house empty, I began my investigation in earnest. Our family computer sat in the corner of the living room, primarily used by Mom for recipes and email. Tiffany had her own laptop, but I knew she occasionally used the family computer when hers was charging. Neither of them were particularly tech-savvy, which worked to my advantage now. The password hadn't changed since my teenage years butterscotch, one after Mom's first cat. Within minutes, I accessed the browser history and email accounts still logged in. What I found confirmed my worst suspicions and revealed even more betrayal than I'd imagined. An email thread between Tiffany and Mom from 2 months earlier discussed plans for selling the house once the mortgage was paid off. Not to secure Mom's retirement as I would have expected, but to provide capital for Tiffany's expanded jewelry business and a down payment on a trendy downtown condo they planned to share. Deeper digging revealed the true state of Tiffany's finances. Despite her talk of business expansion, her company was drowning in debt. Credit card statements showed over $30,000 in outstanding balances across 4 cards. A failed collaboration with an influencer had left her with unsold inventory and damaged supplier relationships. She needed Mom's house equity, not for business growth, but for financial survival. Most shocking was discovering that Mom had changed her will shortly after my divorce. The previous version had split her assets equally between Tiffany and me. The new document left the house and majority of assets to Tiffany, with only a small cash bequest to me. The stated reason: Azure has established financial independence and security through her successful career, while Tiffany requires additional support to achieve stability. The painful irony wasn't lost on me. My success had effectively disqualified me from family support when I needed it most, while Tiffany's financial irresponsibility was rewarded with greater inheritance. In a folder labeled Retirement Options, I found brochures for Florida retirement communities with notes about using house proceeds for the down payment. This directly contradicted Mom's claims about wanting to stay in her home of 40 years. The retirement community brochures were dated just weeks after I moved back home, suggesting my return had accelerated their plans rather than initiated them. The true depth of the betrayal became clear when I found emails to various family members. Mom and Tiffany had systematically painted me as a financial burden, claiming I contributed nothing to household expenses while demanding emotional support. Aunt Carol had been told I was too fragile for family gatherings, explaining why I hadn't been invited to her grandson's graduation party. Needing professional advice, I called Jordan, a former colleague who specialized in real estate law. Over lunch at a cafe far from our neighborhood, I outlined the situation, without revealing it involved my family. Legally, they can't force you to pay anything, Jordan confirmed, but emotionally, they've created quite a manipulation. I'd recommend documenting everything before confronting them. Following her advice, I visited the mortgage company directly. The representative confirmed the remaining balance was indeed $66,000, but also revealed something interesting. The monthly payments were current, with no risk of foreclosure whatsoever. Mom's financial distress had been entirely fabricated to extract money from me. That evening, while helping Mom organize her bedroom closet, as requested, I made a discovery that transported me back to childhood. Hidden beneath winter blankets was Tiffany's old diary, apparently recently used, given the fresh entries. My sister had always been predictable, using the same hiding places for decades. Ethical considerations briefly crossed my mind before I opened it, but self-preservation won out. Inside, page after page documented Tiffany's long-standing jealousy and resentment. Azure always has to be the perfect one. One recent entry read, "Perfect job, perfect apartment, perfect life." Now she's here playing perfect daughter again, but Mom doesn't need to know I'm making sure this visit stays temporary. Entries, dating back, months before my return, revealed Tiffany had convinced Mom that I would use them for temporary housing and emotional support, then abandon them again for my fancy city life. She had deliberately poisoned the well before I ever set foot back home. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when I discovered Tiffany's conversations with Travis about moving in. They planned to convert my childhood bedroom into a home office for his graphic design business. The timeline showed they had begun making these plans within weeks of my arrival, long before any reasonable person would have expected me to have recovered financially and emotionally from my divorce. Most disturbing was finding Mom's medical records in her desk drawer. The reading glasses prescription I'd helped her order last month was actually for early-stage macular degeneration, a condition she had hidden from me. She would need increasing support in coming years, yet planned to move to Florida with Tiffany, who could barely manage her own affairs. Armed with this knowledge, I spent an evening with my closest friend from high school, Taylor, who had remained in Madison. Over dinner at her apartment, safely away from prying ears, we strategized my approach to Mom's birthday revelation. "You can't just explode at a family gathering," Taylor cautioned. "You need to be strategic, maintain dignity, and ensure everyone understands exactly what happened." "I'm not planning a scene," I assured her. "Just a carefully orchestrated moment of truth." We spent hours refining my plan, preparing documentation, and practicing what I would say. By the time I returned home that night, I felt centered and prepared. The hurt remained a dull ache beneath my breastbone, but it no longer controlled my thinking. As I quietly entered the dark house, I heard Tiffany on the phone in the kitchen. "Just 2 more weeks," she was saying. "Once the mortgage is paid, we'll start dropping hints about how crowded the house feels. By Christmas, you'll be moved in, and she'll be gone." I smiled in the darkness, thinking of the surprise I had planned. Not the one they expected, but the one they deserved. The morning of Mom's 70th birthday dawned bright and clear, a perfect September Saturday. I had been up since 5, putting final touches on the lemon raspberry cake and arranging fresh flowers throughout the house. The dining room looked beautiful, with the antique table extended to accommodate all 15 guests expected for the celebration dinner. Family members began arriving around 4 in the afternoon. Aunt Carol brought her famous potato salad. Uncle Rick came bearing a case of Mom's favorite white wine, and cousins trickled in with gift bags and birthday cards. Each seemed momentarily surprised to see me still in residence, confirming that Tiffany's narrative about my imminent departure had circulated widely. Still getting settled in Madison Azure, Aunt Carol asked with a pointed glance at my car visible in the driveway. "Tiffany mentioned you were looking at apartments downtown." "My plans have evolved somewhat," I replied with a practiced smile. "All will become clear during dinner." Throughout the party preparations, Tiffany made numerous small, smug comments. "Azure, the plates go. On the left," she corrected loudly as I set the table despite my correct placement. "Mom likes the candles in the center, not scattered like that," she added, moving my carefully arranged decorations. Each correction was designed to establish her authority in what she clearly viewed as her territory. I maintained my composure, focusing on the evening ahead rather than these petty power plays. The documentation I needed was securely stored in an elegant gift envelope alongside the mortgage payoff check. Everything was in place for the moment I had carefully orchestrated. The gift-giving portion of the evening came after appetizers but before the main course. Tiffany insisted on going first, presenting Mom with an expensive-looking gold bracelet. "I designed it myself," she announced to the assembled family. "Each charm represents a special moment in Mom's life." She proceeded to explain each symbol, ending with, "And I've left room to add more charms as we create new memories in our next chapter." The knowing look they exchanged made the subtext clear to me, if not to the others present. Various family members presented their gifts, from photo albums to gardening tools, each accompanied by warm wishes and reminiscences. Finally, it was my turn. I excused myself briefly to retrieve my envelope from the study. Dinner proceeded with the usual family stories and casual conversations. I participated minimally, conserving my emotional energy for what was to come. When the plates were cleared and Mom's birthday cake was brought to the table, I knew my moment had arrived. Standing slowly, I lifted my champagne glass and gently tapped it with a spoon. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to me. Before we enjoy this wonderful cake, I began, my voice steady. Despite my pounding heart, I'd like to say a few words about family trust and the meaning of home. Mom's smile faltered slightly, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her face. Beside her, Tiffany shifted uncomfortably in her chair. When I returned home 4 months ago, I was at my lowest point, I continued. My marriage had ended, my career had suffered setbacks, and I needed a safe harbor to rebuild my life. I thought I had found that here, with the two people I trusted most in the world. The room remained silent, guests, sensing the undercurrent of tension beneath my measured words. I was so grateful for what I believed was unconditional support that I wanted to give something meaningful in return. When I discovered Mom's mortgage situation, I decided to pay off the remaining $66,000 as a birthday gift. Murmurs of appreciation rippled through the gathering. Mom's expression shifted between surprise and alarm, clearly wondering how much I knew about their plans. However, I continued removing documents from my envelope before finalizing such a significant financial transaction. I did what any good financial advisor would do. I researched. And what I discovered changed everything. With deliberate movements, I placed the mortgage statement on the table. I learned there was never any risk of foreclosure. Next came printouts of the emails between Mom and Tiffany. I found plans to sell this house once the mortgage was paid, not to secure Mom's retirement, but to fund Tiffany's failing business ventures. Gasps and uncomfortable shifting filled the room. Uncle Rick, always the family protector, leaned forward with concern etched on his face. Azure, perhaps this isn't the time or place. With respect, Uncle Rick, this is exactly the time and place, I replied firmly. For months, I've been systematically excluded, manipulated, and used by the very people who should have been supporting me through the hardest period of my life. I placed the check on the table, watching Mom's eyes widen at the amount. This mortgage payment comes with conditions. First, I've arranged for the deed to be modified to include my name alongside Mom's, ensuring the house cannot be sold without my consent. Second, I've documented all financial contributions I've made since returning home, which will be legally recognized in any future property discussions. Tiffany stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. You had no right to go through our private conversations. Her voice shook with anger and embarrassment. Mom needed help with the mortgage. We never asked you to pay it all at once. Actually, Tiffany, I countered, calmly producing copies of her diary entries, you orchestrated this entire situation. You convinced Mom I would use this home temporarily and leave, while simultaneously making me feel unwelcome through countless small aggressions. You intercepted my business calls, excluded me from family events, and systematically undermined my position in this family. The color drained from her face as she recognized her own words on the pages before me. That's my private diary, she whispered. And these were my private business calls, I replied. These were my personal belongings you moved without permission. This was my reputation you damaged with family members through deliberate misinformation. Mom finally found her voice, tears welling in her eyes. Azure, we didn't mean it like that. We were just talking, just making plans. Everyone does that. Planning to exploit your daughter's financial generosity while actively working to remove her from your life? No, Mom, everyone doesn't do that. My voice remained steady even as my heart ached. Everyone doesn't tell their daughter they're facing foreclosure when they're not. Everyone doesn't accept $1,200 for non-existent roof repairs. The shock on the faces of our extended family told me they were hearing the unvarnished truth for the first time. Aunt Carol looked particularly dismayed, surely realizing she had been complicit in my exclusion based on false information. I came home because I needed my family. I continued emotion, finally coloring my words. Instead, I found people willing to use my vulnerability for financial gain. People who referred to me by a childhood nickname while plotting how quickly they could push me out once they had what they wanted from me. Travis, who had been invited as Tiffany's +1, looked uncomfortable as all eyes turned to him. "I didn't know the full situation," he said weakly. "Tiffany just said her sister was staying temporarily." The saddest part, I concluded, placing the mortgage check in front of Mom, is that I would have gladly helped with the mortgage without any manipulation. I would have supported both of you because that's what family does. But family doesn't conspire, manipulate, and betray. The silence that followed felt eternal. Mom stared at the check, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. Tiffany remained standing, her posture defensive, but her expression revealing the undeniable truth of my words. Finally, Uncle Rick cleared his throat. "Margaret, is what Azure's saying true about the foreclosure story? And the roof repairs?" Mom's lack of direct denial was confirmation enough. The family dinner had become a painful reckoning that none of us had anticipated when arriving for birthday celebration. I remained standing, maintaining the dignity I had practiced with Taylor. "I'll be moving out tonight. My contribution to this household deserves better respect than I've been shown. The mortgage check is valid, and the legal documentation is being processed regardless of tonight's events. Consider it my final act as the daughter and sister you once had." As family members exchanged uncomfortable glances, I gathered my documentation with steady hands. The truth had finally been spoken aloud, and despite the pain, I felt lighter than I had in months. The immediate aftermath of my birthday revelation unfolded exactly as one might expect. Tiffany stormed out of the dining room, slamming the door with enough force to rattle the family photos on the wall. Mom collapsed into tears, alternating between sobbing apologies and attempts to justify their behavior. "We were just talking," she kept repeating. "Everyone says things they don't mean sometimes." The extended family departed quickly, murmuring awkward goodbyes and avoiding eye contact. Only Janet, my mother's sister's daughter, lingered behind, helping clear dessert plates while the drama continued in the living room. "I had no idea," she whispered, as we loaded the dishwasher. "Tiffany told everyone you were barely contributing and taking advantage of your mom's generosity." "The opposite was true," I replied, my voice steady despite my exhaustion. "I've paid 70% of household expenses since arriving, not counting the additional funds they extracted through fake emergencies." Janet squeezed my shoulder gently. "My guest house is empty if you need a place tonight." That kindness nearly broke my carefully maintained composure. "Thank you," I managed, swallowing hard. I was planning to get a hotel, but a friendly face would be welcome right now. While Tiffany remained locked in her room upstairs, Mom finally approached me as I packed essential belongings. "You didn't have to embarrass us in front of everyone," she said, hovering in my doorway. "We could have discussed this privately." I continued folding clothes into my suitcase without looking up. "Like you discussed me privately, planning my exit while taking my money." "We didn't mean it like that," she insisted, the phrase becoming her mantra of denial. "You're twisting things. We were grateful you were helping with the mortgage." I finally met her gaze. "Mom, I have the emails where you specifically told Tiffany to be patient until I paid the mortgage. I have your text messages about using the $1,200 I gave you for roof repairs to fund Tiffany's website. There's no twisting needed when I have your exact words. She had no response to that. As I zipped my suitcase and gathered my laptop bag, she asked in a small voice, "Will you ever forgive me?" "I don't know," I answered honestly. "Right now I need space to process being treated like an ATM by my own family." That night in Janet's comfortable guest house, I slept better than I had in months, the weight of pretending finally lifted from my shoulders. The next morning, text messages from family members began arriving. Most expressed shock at what they had witnessed and offered support. A few, clearly having heard Tiffany's version first, accused me of overreacting to normal family discussions. The family lines were being drawn. Over the following days, I focused on rebuilding rather than dwelling on betrayal. I contacted my professional network, explaining I was looking for a permanent residence and seeking new client opportunities in Madison. An old colleague connected me with Williams Financial, a boutique firm looking for an advisor with my expertise in sustainable investments. The interview went remarkably well, with an offer following just 2 days later. A week after the birthday revelation, I received a call from Aunt Carol. "I owe you an apology," she began, without preamble. "Tiffany told me you were too emotionally fragile for family gatherings. I should have reached out to you directly instead of accepting her assessment." These small reconciliations with extended family helped ease the pain, though the central wound remained raw. Mom left increasingly desperate voicemails, her explanations evolving from denial to minimization. We were just brainstorming, options gave way to "everyone says things they regret sometimes," finally arriving at I was confused about the foreclosure situation myself. I maintained minimal contact, responding to texts with brief acknowledgments, but declining invitations to discuss things in person. Distance was providing clarity. I couldn't risk clouding with premature reconciliation attempts. Tiffany took a different approach, launching what amounted to a social media campaign, portraying herself as the victim of family discord. Vague posts about toxic family members who only appear when they need something appeared regularly, carefully worded to garner sympathy without revealing specifics that might contradict her narrative. Rather than engaging in this digital drama, I channeled my energy into professional growth. The new position at Williams Financial came with an office overlooking Lake Monona and a client list that aligned perfectly with my expertise. Within a month, I secured 2 major accounts through my existing network, establishing myself as a valuable addition to the firm. While apartment hunting, I received an unexpected call from Travis, Tiffany's boyfriend. "I wanted you to know. I've moved out," he began awkwardly, after what I learned at the birthday dinner. Well, it made me question a lot of things. He revealed that Tiffany had been consistently misrepresenting her financial situation to him, as well claiming business success while accumulating debt. "She had me convinced we'd be putting a down payment on a condo by Christmas," he said. When I asked where that money was coming from, given her credit card statements, I accidentally saw she admitted she was counting on your mother selling the house. This external validation of my discoveries provided an odd comfort. I wasn't crazy or oversensitive. The manipulation had been real and extended beyond just me. By the 2-month mark, I found a beautiful apartment in a converted historic building downtown. Floor-to-ceiling windows, exposed brick walls, and a balcony with a view of the Capitol building made it feel like a fresh start rather than a backup plan. I furnished it sparsely, but intentionally, each piece chosen to represent my new beginning rather than reminders of what I'd lost. Mom's attempts at reconciliation continued growing more genuine as time passed. A hand-delivered letter acknowledged the deception about the foreclosure risk and roof repairs, though she maintained they had only been considering options regarding selling the house after the mortgage was paid. I read her words carefully, noting the continued minimization, but also recognizing the difficulty of fully admitting such deliberate betrayal. The mortgage had been legally processed, as planned, with my name added to the deed. The house couldn't be sold without my consent, providing security for Mom's retirement, regardless of our personal relationship status. 3 months after moving out, I received an unexpected professional recognition. Madison Business Monthly named me one of their 40 under 40 financial professionals to watch based on my innovative approach to sustainable investment strategies. The irony wasn't lost on me that my career was flourishing precisely when my family had expected me to be at my lowest point. The article brought unexpected closure to one aspect of the family drama. Mom called after seeing it, her voice carrying genuine pride for the first time since my return to Madison. "I always knew you would land on your feet," she said. "You've always been the strong one." "Strong doesn't mean invulnerable," I replied quietly. "Everyone needs support sometimes, especially from family." The silence that followed suggested those words had finally penetrated the wall of justifications she had built around her actions. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a step toward whatever new relationship might eventually emerge from the ashes of what we had lost. 6 months after the birthday revelation, I stood on the balcony of my Lakeview apartment, watching the spring sunshine sparkle on the water. The past half-year had brought profound changes, both painful and healing. My new home had become a true sanctuary. Unlike the temporary feeling of my childhood bedroom, this space reflected who I had become. Bookshelves lined with financial texts and literary classics. A small but well-equipped kitchen where I experimented with recipes I'd always wanted to try. A dedicated home office where I could serve clients remotely when needed. Everything chosen with intention, creating an environment that supported rather than diminished me. More valuable than the physical space was the community I had built around myself. Through a volunteer financial literacy program at the community center, I met Grace and Allison, 2 professional women who quickly became trusted friends. Our weekly coffee meetings provided the genuine support and understanding I had sought but not found with family. Unlike those relationships built on obligation and history, these connections formed around shared values and mutual respect. My career continued to flourish beyond what I could have imagined during those dark post-divorce days. Williams Financial had promoted me to senior advisor after I brought in 3 significant client portfolios. The firm's focus on sustainable investing aligned perfectly with my professional goals, allowing me to build financial security for clients while supporting companies making positive global impact. My relationship with Mom evolved into something I never expected. Initially, I maintained firm boundaries, agreeing to brief coffee meetings in public places rather than private conversations where emotional manipulation might resume. Gradually, these encounters became more comfortable, though never returning to the blind trust I once had. The turning point came unexpectedly. Mom called one Tuesday evening, her voice shaking. "The doctor found something on my mammogram," she said simply. "I'm having a biopsy Thursday." Despite everything that had happened, I found myself driving her to the medical center at 7:30 that Thursday morning. Sitting in the waiting room watching her small frame disappear behind the clinic doors, I realized that love and trust operated on different levels. I could love her without trusting her completely. I could support her through health challenges while maintaining boundaries around financial matters. The biopsy came back negative, but the health scare seemed to shift something fundamental in Mom's perspective. Over lunch afterward, she looked at me with clear eyes and said, "I was so wrong, Azure. Not just about the money, but about how I treated you when you needed me most. This acknowledgement, free from qualifications or excuses, opened a door to genuine healing. We began rebuilding our relationship on more honest terms. I still verified any financial claims she made, but I could enjoy her company without constantly guarding against manipulation. Tiffany proved more resistant to change. Her initial social media campaign faltered when family members who had witnessed the birthday confrontation began questioning her version of events. When that strategy failed, she attempted direct reconciliation, inviting me to lunch with a text that read, "We should talk about what happened. Families should stick together." Our meeting revealed she still viewed the situation as a misunderstanding rather than a betrayal. "We were just talking about possibilities," she insisted. "Everyone makes plans that change later." Planning to exploit someone's vulnerability for financial gain isn't just talking, I replied calmly. "It was a coordinated effort that you documented in your own diary." She had no response to that evidence. Our relationship remained distant but civil, connected through Mom, but no longer pretending the close sisterhood we had once imagined. The financial lessons from my ordeal proved valuable for clients facing their own family complications. Without revealing personal details, I developed expertise in helping clients navigate financial boundaries with family members. One client tearfully thanked me after I helped her establish a trust for her parents that provided support without enabling toxic patterns, saying, "You've helped me feel generous without feeling used." My personal life began flourishing in unexpected ways, too. Through a client's charity auction, I met Daniel, a structural engineer with kind eyes and a thoughtful manner. Our first date lasted 5 hours conversation, flowing effortlessly from professional challenges to favorite books to family complexities. Unlike dating immediately after my divorce, I now approached relationships with clearer boundaries and greater self-knowledge. "You seem very centered," Daniel observed during our third date. "Like someone who knows exactly who they are." It came at a high price, I admitted, sharing a condensed version of recent events. But I wouldn't trade the clarity even to avoid the pain. As summer approached, Mom invited me to Sunday dinner for the first time since I had moved out. Initially hesitant, I finally accepted bringing a bottle of wine rather than emotional expectations. Tiffany attended too, our interaction polite but distant. Progress looked different with her than with Mom, measured in civil exchanges rather than emotional reconnection. The evening ended with Mom walking me to my car. "I kept your room exactly as it was," she said softly, "in case you ever wanted to come back." The old me might have felt guilty or obligated by this statement. Instead, I gently touched her shoulder and said, "I appreciate that, but my place downtown is home now. I'm building a life that works for me." Her smile held both sadness and understanding. "I know. I'm proud of you for that." That night, reflecting on the evening, I realized the most profound lesson from this painful chapter: family could be chosen as well as born. The relationships that sustained me now were built on mutual respect and genuine care rather than obligation. Some biological connections had weakened, while other bonds had strengthened. The following weekend, I declined Mom's invitation to attend a cousin's graduation party. Instead, I joined my volunteer group for a community garden project, laughing as we planted tomatoes in the spring sunshine. Later, Daniel and I enjoyed a quiet dinner where I shared stories about my childhood dreams rather than recent family drama. When Mom called that evening to report on the family event, I listened with interest, but without regret for missing it. "Everyone asked about you," she mentioned. "I told them you're doing wonderfully." "I am," I confirmed, watching the sunset from my balcony. Not despite what happened, but partly because of it. Sometimes the deepest wounds lead to the greatest growth. In losing what I thought was unconditional family support, I found something more valuable: self-reliance, coupled with the ability to form healthier connections. The mortgage check, that had been intended as a loving gift, became instead an investment in my own worth, a boundary statement written in financial terms. As twilight settled over the lake, I considered how differently events might have unfolded had I never overheard that kitchen conversation. I might have paid the mortgage, celebrated Mom's birthday with naive joy, and continued being manipulated indefinitely. That accidental moment of truth, painful as it was, had set me free. Have you ever discovered someone wasn't who you thought they were? How did you rebuild your life after betrayal? Share your story in the comments below. If this journey of setting boundaries and finding strength resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more stories about finding your worth. Remember, sometimes the family we choose becomes more important than the family we're born into. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find the courage to value yourself even when others don't.